All right. We're on the cusp of something big here, Chris. We got a lot to update the folks about. So,
welcome to this investor webinar, an exclusive for everyone that has supported Aptera thus far and gotten us to the amazing vehicle that you're now looking at on your screen. We got over 400 questions that our amazing marketing and communication team has gone through, and we're just going to go through a light presentation to kind of get you up to speed on where we're at, and then we'll start going through some questions and hopefully answer a lot of what you guys are curious about.
Your investment and accelerator participation has really helped us pick up the pace on development of tools, of buying material, finalizing design, and so we're really pleased to be able to share some of that with you today.
We have over 16,000 investors in our push towards solar mobility now, and our accelerator program is doing amazingly well. We raised over $26 million for that program and have over 1,600 people in that program now, so there's less than 400 slots left. So if you haven't become an accelerator, now's the time. The spots are going quick.
It was 390 something early this morning.
392 or something,
yeah. Don't wait, don't miss out.
As you can see on the screen, this is our latest rendering. Jason's been doing amazing work with our rendering team, and we've been able to show off a lot of great features recently. But this is as the design stands today, and there's precious few things left that have to have anything done to them.
There's an important distinction to make here. When people talk about renderings and drawings, they may have the mistaken impression that they're just manifest, just some artistic creation. When you look at the renderings of the Bink, especially the animation of how it goes together, and then you see the pictures of the real Bink in Italy, you can see that all of the curves, the insets, the ribs, everything is the exact same. So the important thing is that the renderings of every surface in here are just actually renderings of real CAD of every single piece of the vehicle that's in CAD, that's being designed, that's being made.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, the part in rendering and then see the part in real life and not be able to distinguish the difference. The rendering tools are pretty darn good now, and this is what the Aptera looks like now. And those beautiful parts we're building with CPC in Italy, that is what will turn into what you see on the screen. Today we wanted to go through some 2023 highlights. We wanted to show you how we're polishing our timeless design. And we wanted to talk about our plan for our first production builds. We're calling them production intent builds, PI builds. And take your questions. We had a survey go out. As I said, we had over 400 questions come back from that. We've gone through and picked what we think illustrates the bulk of the questions, and we'll go through them. And we want to talk about the perks of becoming an Aptera investor and joining our accelerator program, or investing $2,000 to get that $1,000 off coupon for your Aptera purchase. Some amazing things we've accomplished this year. The first thing was we introduced the launch edition. So we said, to reduce complexity and get the vehicle into production as quick as possible, we need to pick one configuration. So we picked the most popular configuration, which was the 400-mile range Aptera, all-wheel drive, full solar. And we introduced that, and now I think we have over 10,000 people that have reservations for that launch edition vehicle. So hopefully more and more people will change their orders to the launch edition, and that will be what we build for the first production runs.
You may remember from April, May timeframe when we were in Italy, where we went to the coastal town of Pesaro, I think, not Pesaro, Pesaro, I've been corrected, to watch the tools being made. And we had dinner at the tool shop there with the family that owns it, and the champagne bottle, cork went through the ceiling and all that kind of stuff.
But that was champagne
there. That was the first time we saw the tools actually being made. And so the real milestone for us is on our last trip a couple of weeks ago, we saw the very last main structural piece being made, not the tool, but that part itself. So all those tools have been made by now, and the parts have been validated. So we went from April of having no parts and just starting tools to today, where we have all those structural tools done and the parts validated.
Yeah, CPC has been an amazing relationship for us, and we've come a long way with them. We've also done a lot of work here in San Diego with our solar panels. going through different iterations, polymer stack-ups, string assembly, processes, and then eventually arrived on the glass configuration that we have today, which is super durable, super tough, and also really, really lightweight, which is surprising.
Yeah, we have, our panels that we have now are we have a stack, if you will, that's released for production. But we're always optimizing it, trying to make it lighter weight and lower cost. And so that's some of the pictures that the people have been seeing is the results of that really thin glass, but still with the same strength, just lower cost and lower weight.
And we're preparing for our first production intent build. So we set aside areas downstairs, basically where we built the Gamma vehicle, but we have 2 stalls ready to start the production intent builds, and we're starting to acquire those parts now. And as we get into 2024, more and more of those will arrive there.
Now, as we talk about the PI builds, I just, for our guests, I want to make one clarification. So we use the word production intent and progressive interchangeably here within the company. And the reason for that is each one of these builds, starting with P1 all the way to P16, are progressively more and more and more towards production. But all of them are design intent, so they'll be able to be upfitted with whatever production intent part they have. So for example, some of the early PI builds won't have HVAC, but when we release that HVAC system, it goes right into the place it's already designed into the beak. So.
Yeah, it is interesting to note that a lot of the mechanical features of the vehicle will look very production intent. They may not be built out of production molds, but they'll be production intent designs. So maybe a CNC cut instead of out of a die cast mold. That's a good example.
Or I think, as they say in Italy or at CPC, off tool, off process. So
yeah.
The ultimate is off tool, off process, meaning it's production tool and it's with the production process. But there may be some things, even in the early builds, that are a specialized process because we just haven't committed to that tool yet. And every manufacturer does that. You may have an engine that comes from a factory, but you may have a sun visor that's made at some small volume shop, for example.
Yeah, I remember stories of Tesla in the early days having to go to Fry's to buy USB connectors to finish
Hopefully
their
we won't be in that position.
But 3D printed parts instead of injection molded plastic parts, that kind of thing will be what the PI series is about. And I know the electrical team is working really hard, but the firmware and software is something that will continue to evolve. And as we get into reliability and durability testing, those things will just get better and better along as we progress through the production intent builds. It's not like the mechanical parts and the hard parts that will have a tool and you just take the part out of the tool and it's done. Firmware and software will be ever evolving.
Always improving the product so we can update it, make it better.
We're kind of refining the design and showing it off, and these are some of the parts that maybe you guys haven't seen yet. We've been evolving the rear license plate indicator light. Originally it had a reverse light built into it too, and it had to fully illuminate the rear light. One weird thing about kind of how the rear of a vehicle is typically with a motorcycle you can cant the license plate 45 degrees and then you can light it from the top. It's really easy to light. But because of the aerodynamic profile of our vehicle, we want to put that plate flat against the rear of the vehicle and also have it be the cover for the charge port. So we really need to light it in a special way, and that light has to be a certain distance away from the plate to cast enough light on it, and that's how we ended up with this license plate illuminator.
It's actually, if you look at the Illumina patents for the oligator, the DNA synthesizer, it's a very similar lighting problem that I faced in my first year on the job. And that is illuminating a tray, a microtiter plate, trying to make it even so we could image it. It's the same problem we have here. We don't have a lot of distance. We don't want to stick things out, but you have to have some distance, have a proper projection, because as we've learned, the government does actually look at the evenness of illumination of a license plate, and they will recall a vehicle if it doesn't meet that illumination. So it's a serious thing.
DNA synthesis, Aptera, it's just all part of the advanced science that we're about here. You can see in the middle picture, our reverse indicators actually moved down below our rear view camera, and we have some reflex, which is those stickers, the red stickers on there, that just allow for kind of side illumination so people can see you at night. The last one is the reflex on the front wheel pants. We've got kind of a shark fin on our front wheel pans now, and I think it looks pretty cool, and it solves the regulatory hurdles of having enough reflector on the side of the vehicle up there. So
It looks really cool too.
yeah. Some of the vents for our AC have been an ever-evolving type thing. We kind of settled on these small adjustable vents where you can, with your thumb, move them up and down. I think they look pretty cool and they serve all the functions we need. And, even though it's been evolving, it's great to see kind of the final product now.
Most of the airflow is going to come from the center vent though.
Yeah.
And that's a real innovation from Jason and the team, that basically instead of plumbing air all around the vehicle, we're able to constrain it around the periphery of that screen there and get the same amount of throw that you would get in a typical vehicle, but without all of the extra parts and space. So we're actually saving space and volume and creating the same cooling effect on the passengers too.
And we get a sneak peek of the user interface here, which has been progressing mightily. The washer fluid for us is actually in the door seal there. You open the door and you can see the washer fluid fill. So hopefully that's a real convenience and something that's easy to spot, and you don't have to open up any weird hatch or the hood or anything to get to your washer fluid. It's
Do you
just
use
right
your
there.
washer at all on your car? I'm curious.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I go through like a gallon every month or so. It has to be spotless for my taste.
The interesting thing about the Aptera, though, is it's so aerodynamic that most bugs will, go on a little aerodynamic ride over the surface of the Aptera and never splat against the windshield. We learned that in testing.
That's right.
That it's really just the point of the nose that ever receives any bug splat. So there will be other things that make your Aptera windshield dirty, but it probably won't be bugs. A little closer look at our user interface. Obviously we've done a lot of reach studies and ergonomic studies to see, where the screen is most usable, and the team has just been going through, kind of all the functions that you need, benchmarking, other electric vehicles that are out there and seeing how their systems work, and what we kind of want to do for our vehicle. Obviously, we want to give people a lot more information about how you're using energy and how you're creating energy with the Aptera. So some unique features for us, are really just a lot more information on how your vehicle is using and producing energy.
I took Gamma home for a couple of days last week and over the weekend, did my shopping, went to the gym, Trader Joe's, etc. And we don't have this version of software on it, but we do have the solar charging version. It shows the real-time power being generated, and it breaks it down by hood, roof, dash, and it was completely addictive. Like, I found myself dodging shadows when parking at a stoplight. Like, if there's a big SUV near me, I didn't want to be in the shadow because then I wasn't making power. And even at night, like at sunset, at the top of the hill, I think I tweeted a picture of this. It was making like 10 or 12 watts just sitting there at sunset. But typically, you can find that just a small change in, dodging the tall vehicles or, pointing from north to south or east to west, makes a big difference in the power. And you find yourself just wanting to maybe take a drive instead of has the least elevation change, has maybe the most insolation, so you gain the most energy.
I think it will be amazing to see the feedback from our first Aptera owners and how they're gamifying their solar production, where they're parking, how they're driving to maximize solar production. And that's a goal of the user interface team, is to give you the tools to see, where you're at on your solar production, and, give you historical data and hopefully give you competitive data, against other people, so people can compete for the most energy savings.
Yeah, so I think I was supposed to talk about that on this slide.
Yeah.
And I know that we're already 13 minutes in. We still have a lot of slides to go, so I'll be brief. But look, this vehicle, if you're a shy person and you don't like talking to strangers, I got to tell you, this vehicle is not for you, because you're going to meet more people than you're comfortable with. And I'm an introvert by nature, and I can't go anywhere without people coming up and asking me about it. And the good news is so few people know about Aptera. Like, there's so much more potential interest in customers out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that know it, they know it instantly. Like, oh my God, how'd you get this? How are you driving this? Do you work for the company? Yeah, I work for them, I would say. But it's a real, like, you just can't go anywhere without people stopping and asking you about it. And then you find yourself proselytizing about solar power, 40 miles a day, not having to charge it. And it's just really cool. You're going to meet a lot of people.
I love seeing people's reactions, you know, and it's a pretty diverse reaction set. But, you know, one of the cool things is looking at this picture, a lot of people don't realize that the vehicle's actually rolling on wheels. So, you know, a lot of people see it on blacktop and they can't see the tires and they instantly think it's some sort of spaceship or floating device. Or
Are we back on that again?
yeah. You know, our relationship with CPC has grown over the months, and I think it's just been a great way for us to move from our low volume thinking, which was kind of how we started the company 3 years ago. You know, once we had our first 4,000 orders, we realized, hey, you know, this is probably going to be bigger than our, you know, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 units a year aspiration. We need to start thinking of, you know, 50 and 100,000 units. And, you know, that's when we started searching, and Koch had a connection with CPC in Italy, and they're just masters of their domain. They make, you know, brilliant carbon fiber structures for the world's most famous supercars. And if you go to their facility, you'll just be wowed by all the things they make and how finished their product is. They make turnkey vehicles for some of the biggest supercar brands in the world.
And they don't really advertise that or talk about that, but they are a turnkey builder for a lot of manufacturers. So they not only design and make the tooling, they make the parts, they also assemble the vehicles for a lot of different companies. And Akos did show us a lot of maybe competitive companies, and we looked at them all. And then when they went to go here, he said, look, they won't let me take a picture of anything. It's all, you know, confidential. You guys have to come and see it. So we went there, we went to go see it, we were just blown away. And if you can just look at this picture right now, the one that's on the screen, everything, every little dent, indentation, threaded boss is there for something that's already designed in CAD to bolt into or to set in. So the washer bottle or the brake fluid bottle, et cetera, like everything already has a place in there. And it's just going to lock right in with very little muss and fuss.
Yeah, we sent Sandy Monroe to CPC shortly after that, and he got to see how amazing their processes are, and I think he just couldn't stop talking about the very minimal amount of waste you have in the process. You know, it's really just the flashing around this part now, the little scraggly parts get cut off. The less than 1% of waste in this process, and you know, we came from building these parts as resin infused parts, and there was, you know, 20 to 30% waste. So we threw away a lot of consumables.
Plus yeah, exactly, the consumables as well with resin fusion.
And this is just a process that creates very little waste. The waste is then recycled back into new parts, so there's, you know, virtually no waste. And the parts come out rock solid, the same every time.
And truthfully, we always felt like that was, even though we were making the world's most efficient vehicle and it was, you know, solar powered and able to go 40 miles on a charge, we always felt that the resin infusion part of the story, you know, with all the waste of consumables and everything else, it didn't match up with the overall promise of this vehicle. And this process does. Because number one, yeah, carbon is made from oil, so it's sequestering oil that would otherwise be burned or used as gasoline or some other thing, and putting it into a structure that's going to last virtually forever. And there's little to no waste, like you said. They collect it and it's all recycled.
You know, one of the beauties of the parts that you alluded to is we get to build in a lot of things. So we can build in cable management, we can build in fasteners, we can build in you know, bonding features, so the vehicle basically clicks together like Legos. You know, you end up with parts that look like injection molded parts at the end of the day. So, you know, this is part of the tub that has the low voltage wires that we run through the interior. You know, there's a channel already built, and then on the bottom side, there's carriers for the high voltage cables for everything underneath the vehicle. So, you know, I think this is the way, as the Mandalorian.
It's I don't know what you're talking about. This is actually, it's also a great part savings and weight savings, because for every trough or feature like this that we put in the body and in the tool, there's one fewer clip or one fewer cover that's there to secure a wiring harness or a brake line or something like that. So it's part of an overall philosophy of putting as much of the detail and the structure in the part at design time, so that when we go to build it, there's just very little else that needs to be done.
It's very WWSD, you know, what would Sandy do? And it's it's making parts pull multiple duty, and that's exactly what CPC's given us, as these parts, you know, do multiple duties.
You can see even on the right here, the upper right, I think where the top and the bottom come together, that's where the cross-car beam flange is. So all this stuff just basically will click and bolt in. It's just beautiful to look at. Everything here, I think some of the indentations in the front are for the air handler.
Yep.
So you see they're all in the same plane. That's where
Those
it
little
goes.
U pockets are where the air handler actually mounts. And then the big hump upside down U is where the pass-through is to the front of the vehicle. To
I
get
could
the
have
cables.
cleaned this out before I took a picture of it, I shouldn't have.
That's okay. People want to know, and they want to know fast.
So you're looking at the light tunnel here. Fabio in the far left. Fabio's our project manager, Fabio Champa. He's our project manager there at CPC, and he's in charge of making all this happen at a day-to-day level. So he's calling us if we're late with some information or a drawing or something like that. You see Claudio in the front. Claudio has worked for Lamborghini for over 40 years in CPC, building many of their newer vehicles now that Lamborghini, I think, was owned by Audi. And so he brings that level of craftsmanship, him and his team that you don't see, him and his team that'll be doing the first assembly of our vehicles. Enrico there, and of course Thomas Vecchi, who you've seen in the interview.
And this light tunnel is cool. It's had many of the world's most famous supercars pass through it. The little red box with the dot in the middle, that's a coordinate measurement machine that they actually do quality checks on for some of these amazing supercars. But you can imagine, you know, if you buy $1.5 million vehicle, it's got to be well toleranced and look very pretty. So, you know, we get that kind of precision and expertise with CPC.
What you don't see is our office here in Italy is on the second, it's the opposite of what you're looking at. So behind this picture, but the second story, they call it the fishbowl, and we can look down on the floor and see everything happening.
It's beautiful and super productive, and all the guys that we've sent over there, you know, just rave about how amazing CPC is. Now we're going to show a video about Fabio.
Yes.
Good morning. Why don't you tell us your name and what you do here?
Hi Steve, I'm Fabio Champa and I'm the program manager for the project Aptera here in CPC.
And how long have you been at CPC?
7 years, but I'm coming from another experience in Stellantis Maserati that I was working for 12 years.
So that's a really big company,
Yeah.
and CPC is smaller but very innovative. So what was it like? What's it like coming here and coming from a big company, being at CPC?
Because I see in CPC the opportunity to put my experience in here and also to develop other type of experience, making also carbon parts and glass fiber parts.
Now, let's turn over here to the vehicle. Now, you guys were, we were maybe expecting this tub to be done later than it was, but actually this came out of the mold last week.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this whole project in terms of how long you've been on it and where we are in terms of our status in completion.
Okay, so we started more or less 1 year ago. So currently we are in the phase that we are finalizing the CIE simulation for crash and aerodynamics, and also we are making a simulation on vehicle dynamics activity. So in order to have all the suspension also in a proper way. So we will also simulate physically what we have on the result of the simulation later, in order to have the correlation between the two activities.
Now, one of our partners that we're working with that's helping us with the simulation shared with us that they'll be able to put that simulation in a drivable simulator.
Yeah.
Have you seen that before?
Yes, because as I said, my previous experience was in Maserati and Stellantis, and we did the same for so the other vehicle architecture that we did in the past. So yes,
So
it's something that I'm familiar.
This will be the first, let's get you maybe back over here.
Yeah.
This will be the first solar three-wheel vehicle that you will have driven in that simulator.
Yeah, the first.
So how has this project gone compared to other projects? Tell me, like, what's the biggest difference you've seen with Aptera, maybe compared to other companies?
The enthusiasm in doing the things. So it's it's a young company, but with people that put all the effort all the day. So this help everybody in order to reach the target that we have.
Well, you guys have done a fantastic job. I really appreciate all the work and the
Thank
late
you,
hours.
sir.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We I just want to say it was great to introduce Fabio to the greater community because he's one of the people working behind the scenes every day. And I think it's important for people to know that Aptera isn't just Aptera California, it's also CPC and Aptera Italia. And we have a lot of activity going over there, and Fabio is one of the key players making things happen on a day-to-day level.
He's a super talented guy, program manager, at the highest level, and he's done some amazing things in his career, and now to have his expertise helping Aptera through this is just great. They're really experts at making cars and vehicles, and we're experts on the technology that we're bringing the world here with solar mobility, but really battery packs, solar panels, those kind of things. We've got a lot of engineers here to do that. But
And building companies. I mean, you might think Aptera is building vehicles and cars, but our management team, over half of them have either started or worked at a high level on a startup, and 2 of them have exited. You and Tom. And so I think to think about the activities that we do here best in San Diego, the firmware, the software, solar batteries, and creating and building and running companies. The suspension, the braking, the chassis, all that stuff, it's in their blood in Italy. I mean, they love that stuff, and they're really good at it.
And they've got a world of supply chain, help there too, because they build, some pretty amazing vehicles out of that part of Italy. We wanted to discuss kind of, the separation of duties with Italy and us here in Carlsbad, California. But really, in Italy, they're doing the BINC, the main body structure of the vehicle. They're doing the frame, the underlayment that holds the battery pack and the suspension. They're doing the die-cast, suspension parts and the closures. The closures are super important. A lot of automotive engineers would say a car is nothing but doors designed with the rest of the vehicle kind of hung off them. But the seals for the doors, the hinges, the door alignment, all that stuff is being handled by world-class experts in Italy. And here in San Diego, we're working on what we do best, which is the battery and solar with the California Energy Commission grant help. Electrical systems, high voltage, low voltage, firmware, the UI, the UX. All that development's happening here.
And I mean, there's still a mountain of firmware and software to write. Honestly, even though we're making all this progress with the BINC, we've got a lot of things on the electrical side that we just couldn't finalize until a lot of the mechanical was finalized. And so that's probably going to be one group that begins hiring up, and we start throwing more money at quickly.
Which brings us to our PI builds here. So. Italy's taking care of a lot of the mechanical nature of that PI builds, but eventually they'll come back here, and we're going to have to add the battery pack. We're going to have to add the solar. We'll probably have to add some of the interior and electronics, wiring harnesses, and then get everything working here.
And some of that is still a little bit undecided. For example, it does make a lot of sense to have the battery pack there so it can drive on the boat versus being boxed up without it. But we don't want to be in the business of building packs here and then shipping them there only to have them come back. So there's still some details that we have to finalize.
But the longest lead tooling item is already taken care of, the body structure. We committed to that 14, 15 months ago now. It's been a long road. It's cost a lot of money. It's really through all of your investment and support that we've been able to do as much as we have with CPC. But now we've got a big check mark by the body structure, and now we're working on the soft tools necessary for these first PI builds. So all the plastic parts and maybe some of the covers. Like the inner fender and stuff, maybe soft tooled. Those types of things will have to come together over the next month. And, Italy's really good at gathering those kind of resources for us. So they're going to help us get all that stuff over the next month. And, they feel that, beginning of next year is going to be putting all the pieces of the puzzle together for these first production builds. Then they'll get them here. We need a production intent battery pack. The battery team's done an amazing job at building us a very robust, and the most energy-dense battery pack in the industry. So, we'll put that together and have that ready for the first PI builds, along with the solar team, waiting to finalize some of their designs. They're still refining some of the seals around some of the panels. But once they release those to be built, it's actually very quickly to get some of those seals.
Yeah,
made.
and we wanted, I mean, it really, and that was just an aesthetic exercise in that the seal function has already been described or designed, but we wanted to see as little of the seal as possible, or
Yeah.
someone on the management team wanted to see as little of the seal as possible. But the key thing to keep in mind with PI builds is that even in the early productions, you know, first of all, back up for a second, everything that's safety related or structural is off process and off tool. Those are things that have been designed, released on production tooling. But there's going to be lots of little things, side panels, this and that can be from soft tools, even in production.
And how those PI builds come together, you know, the PI builds mean a lot of different things. They have to serve a purpose. They're not just pretty vehicles or vehicles for validation, for you know, sending to suppliers to adjust performance characteristics and such. And we have a very detailed plan for the first 16 PI builds. And you know, the first 3 we illustrated on the screen here. But you know, the first vehicle is really you know, powertrain testing, you know, electrical systems.
And all of the PI builds were done in a way to, I'd say, minimize the amount of total expenditure. For example, the same vehicles that go through the same group of 3 vehicles that are tested by KW for the suspension, for the dampening and tuning of the suspension and springs, then go to E-Ray for the ABS testing. So we're not making 6 vehicles for that purpose. We're taking 3, doing the suspension testing, and then sending it to the ABS company, you know, afterwards. So we're saving money wherever we can. And also, on some of these vehicles, even P11, we're pretty confident that we don't even need the battery thermal cooling for this vehicle, because we only need the cooling in the extreme cases, like the extreme grades and fast charging. So for a lot of the early development that we need to do, some of these won't even need battery cooling, they won't need HVAC, but they're all forward compatible. So once those items are released, they can be retrofit to any of these vehicles, because that's the idea of the progressive production intent.
But we know all of you are really waiting for PI2, because that's going to be the production intent representative pretty vehicle that you can sit in and drive. And you know, obviously we'll probably have a big party here in San Diego when we finish up that vehicle, so people can come and see it, and we can get press on what will be the future of solar mobility. You know, we've made all of this happen with your support. You know, the investments thus far have gotten us a long way. We've raised over 110 million from the crowd now, from 16,000 investors, which is, you know, just an amazing number. And we continue to raise good crowdfunding as we push towards production. The accelerator program in itself has raised $26 million. There's only 393 spots left.
I think that's less now.
So,
it was that this morning.
So things will get exciting as this gets down to 300 and 200 and 100.
I think once it's all said and done here, and we can look at the history books, I think this will be one of the most capital efficient designs of a new vehicle ever. I mean, we've been able to do so much with this amount of money that in any comparative example that we've seen with OEMs or other vehicles, other companies, it's, you know, 5-10 times as much money. So we are both thankful for the investors and the accelerators, but we're also, we want to take note of just how much we've done with this money versus anything else that we've seen.
Yeah, most vehicle programs, even, you know, modern recent vehicle programs, you know, cost in the 3 to 4 billion, sometimes 5-6 billion. We've seen notable, you know, EV companies, you know, building pickup trucks that, you know, have spent a lot of money to get to production. You know, we're capital efficient in a lot of different ways. You know, the way we build our body structure is capital efficient. You know, the way we've, you know, designed our subsystems, you know, and leverage our supply chain is really capital efficient. And that means for an order of magnitude less money, we're able to put this vehicle to production. And it's been with your support that we've come this far, and with just a little more support and working through some of the term sheets we have now, we'll get the final support to get this thing to production in the next 9 months to a year.
Even how we spend money with the spend management. Yeah. You know, at a weekly level, we manage the cash flow on what we decide to spend on and not. So
it's definitely been arduous sometimes, the stewardship of all of your capital, but we want to spend every dollar wisely, and we want to make the most of everything we spend. Another way besides the accelerator program where you can help us, the accelerator program for the $10,000 investment gets you one of the first 2,000 delivery slots. But we also introduced this new program, which if you invest $2,000, you can actually get a $1,000 off coupon for your vehicle purchase. So it's a great boon to your investment. It means you're getting a lot more value for that investment. And we think this is something that will continue to inject capital into the tooling and equipment we need to start production.
You can print out your receipt of doing it online and put it in someone's stocking for Christmas.
Great stocking stuffer. I agree. So now we wanted to take some questions and answer anything you guys might have queries about. But anything we forgot, marketing team?
Ready to begin reading the curated questions?
We are ready. 400 questions, whittled down to about 40. Obviously, a lot of the questions were duplicate questions, so we tried to match the spirit of a lot of what you guys asked. But do you guys want to ask us questions, or should we just read it aloud?
I think you can just read them. Just to know, we focus more on investment-related questions than we did on technical questions. So let's try to get the answers out to those another way.
All right.
What is the current company valuation? Right now, our current pre-money valuation is about $805 million. That was an easy one. Okay, that was a softball. I've heard you would prefer to have someone make a $50 million investment to fast-track production, but you also believe there's a way forward without that. When do you estimate you could begin production without $50 million, and what do you think would be the ongoing differences? We would love to have a fully funded plan. We would love to have that inspired billionaire write us a $100 million check and be able to make solar mobility happen quicker. But we've been slowly metering ourselves into production. We've been raising good crowdfunding money. Our expenses are low, and we're able to plow excess money that we get into tooling and equipment to build this vehicle.
So that $150 million initially has reduced it a little bit, and we can do more in tranches than we thought we could previously.
Yeah, it's, if we don't get a big check, things just happen slower. So, if we can, turn one of these term sheets that we have now into a deal in the next 2 months, then we're on track to produce vehicles in 2024. If it takes longer to raise the money, it just delays the time in which we deliver our first vehicle. So you can imagine us still raising that $50 million, maybe say over the next year, and that would just delay the start of production proportionally to when we could get that $50 million.
I think the next question was about the term sheet, so I know we can't say a lot of detail about it, but what can we tell people?
Yeah, I mean, we have several term sheets that are all very different. Some are debt, some are equity. We have been considering some SPAC options, reverse merger options. And it's really just choosing, what's going to be right for Aptera's growth long term. Some of the terms of these deals maybe don't, look as attractive in year 2, year 3, year 5. So it's really just figuring out, what's going to get us the most capital long term, what's going to get the vehicle into production quickest, and what's going to, defend, shareholder value and continue to build us towards an IPO.
And even, I think it's interesting to note that even in, this so-called economy and stock market with these interest rates and everything else, that some of this interest is inbound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the markets have really changed in the last 6 months, and I think the markets are hungry for deals with positivity and great metrics, and I think we have those. We have around $1.7 billion in reserve product. We have kind of a retail public support like no other company has really had, the most successful crowdfunding of this type in history. I think we've caught the eye of a lot of investors that just weren't in the market a year ago. People a year and a half ago just weren't deploying capital. That was the answer that we would get. We love your idea, we love your team, we love your products, but we are not deploying capital was the answer we were getting 18 months ago.
Since a lot of these are finance related and you're the finance guy, why don't I read them to you?
Sure.
Okay. Because I'm not going to feign like I'm going to answer some of these because I'm not. You'll yell at me if I get it wrong. So what is our strategy for IPO after production starts? Now, you just mentioned some of the SPAC interest that's out there, but what can we say about IPO intentions or cannot say?
We would love to tie an IPO to our production start. So obviously, you know, once we start delivering vehicles, we think we'll get a lot more notoriety. We think we'll get a lot more pre-orders. It seems like a natural fit that if we can tie an IPO to our production start, that, you know, that kind of maximizes the benefit of everything. It gives us growth capital to, you know, launch into other variants of the three-wheeler, possibly four-wheel vehicles, you know, a whole future plan of getting us to 150,000 units a year. I mean, we aspire to deliver 1 million Aptera by 2033. So how do we do that? You know, it will be a capital-intense plan. It will require multiple factories, and an IPO can help us, you know, rally the capital to do that.
I mean, in any business like this, you're never done raising money.
Never done raising money.
Here's another one. As an investor, you both seem to keep the company remarkably well focused. Thank you. And on the goal and not caught up in innumerable logistical quagmires and naysaying of it can't be done. How do you say that? How do you stay focused and keep everyone on track without getting overcome by challenges?
That's a good question. You know, I think we're both positive guys. I think we wouldn't have jumped into such a, you know, difficult endeavor if we didn't think that we could overcome the challenges to get there. I mean, I think I've, in my past, made world-shaping ideas happen. You know, you've been, you know, Illumina making the largest DNA synthesizing robot the world's ever seen and the world's most advanced hydroponics farm over in Abu Dhabi. And I think both Steve and I have tackled grand challenges. And when it came to the problem of solar mobility, you know, it was really bringing a lot of different technologies together. And I don't think I really saw any one technology as overwhelming. It was just bringing together the solar, the battery pack, the body structure, the drivetrain, you know, all under one roof. And if you break them down into different segments, none of them seem like they're too overwhelming. And I think we've got an amazing team to conquer those challenges. So I stay positive because we've built such an amazing team that can execute on those, you know, the different zones of focus, and it will make it all happen.
And I think as different as we are, you know, personality-wise, we both have this common trait of looking at the future and seeing the sort of future state of these vehicles driving around, you know, ringing the bell on Wall Street,
Yeah.
seeing, you know, thousands of these vehicles on the road, and even, you know, go to bed dreaming about it. So that's something like both you and I do. We're always thinking about the future state of what it's going to be too. Okay, next one. Oh, this one. I've invested over $10,000 in earlier rounds, but I've been hesitant to participate in the accelerator program due to not knowing how the terms and conditions from angel investors would affect the C round stocks. What can you share to date regarding the effects of my present and future investments before going out as an IPO by any future angel investors?
Yeah, obviously, if you've invested in the early rounds and you bought stock at 42 cents or 380 or 880, you know, we're looking pretty good at 1050 a share. We would want to do an IPO at obviously, you know, some increased price from that, and you know, the markets have their way with you after that, so there's no guarantees. But you know, we're kind of past the angel investment phase. You know, we're looking, you know, for institutional support. We're looking for syndicated rounds. We're looking at debt. You know, we're in a different kind of class now that we're looking at, you know, kind of a Series C round and an IPO strategy. So, you know, it's an evolutionary process that every company goes through. You know, you start with kind of founding shares, and then you raise friends and family money, and then you go out and find some angel investors, and then you find VC money, and then hopefully you're off to IPO. And that's the same course that we're on. You know, we're past kind of the angel phase, and now we're on to IPO talk. But you look at the landscape and you look at companies like Rivian and Lucid and obviously Tesla, you know, companies that have, you know, brought technology to the forefront and had, you know, real consumer demand for what they're doing. They're very valuable companies. They're, you know, $20 billion, $40 billion, you know, Tesla was almost $1 trillion company for a while. And we feel we're right on the precipice of something great here. We feel that we're bringing technologies that no other company really has. You know, Elon and Tesla salivate over the idea of having a body structure built of only 6 parts. You know, these other vehicle companies, you know, they salivate at 100 watt hours per mile. You know, they're burning 700 watt hours per mile. You know, imagine what you could do with a 205 kilowatt hour battery pack if you were burning less energy. So I think we're bringing, you know, real technology, intellectual property to bear, and hopefully that will result in great reward for a lot of investors, all of you that have supported the company along the way. The Accelerator program is an amazing opportunity to not only participate in that reward as we go public, but also to get one of the first 2,000 delivery slots, and that vehicle in itself should be very valuable. I know I see some of the early Tesla Roadsters still selling for 300 grand. Those first Tesla vehicles are really valuable, and so will be the first 2,000 Accelerator delivery slots.
And, we shouldn't lose focus on the fact that, after 5 or 6, 10 years, there's going to be hundreds of megawatt hours of mobile solar installed with Apteras. And that's a significant amount of power that can be brought to bear in many different ways than we're thinking about right now, and a completely different revenue model even. So there's no other vehicle that has that sort of feature built in, and it's not something that's added on to us. It's part of who we are. It's part of the DNA, part of the fundamental IP.
Yeah, I would keep in mind that when you're investing in Aptera, you invest in the Accelerator program, you get one of the early deliveries, but you're also investing in technologies that we're going to deploy elsewhere. We've got the most energy-dense battery pack. We're going to monetize that. We already have strategies to monetize our solar. We're working with companies, that are doing ground support equipment for airlines and such. We think that there's a number of ways we can monetize our other technologies. And when you invest in Aptera, you're investing in all that, not just this first 3-wheeled vehicles, but all the technologies we're developing.
We might even be able to make some announcements about that next January.
Yeah, and on the battery pack. So, lots of really cool things happening for sure.
Here's an interesting one. Simple, should be simple, but how many total parts and subassemblies will there be? Structurally, there's less than 10 parts, right?
Yes, speaking, kind of out of my depth, Jordan and the supply chain team, we have 172 major parts of the Aptera, so less than 200 parts, total make up the Aptera. But if you broke down those parts, there is over 1,000 individual parts. You can get the screws and the hoses and stuff like that. But we've broken the vehicle down into 12 zones, and of those 12 zones, there's under 200 parts that make up the whole vehicle. And if you compare that to a modern automotive vehicle, they'll have 10 times the amount of parts we have. So, WWSD, what would Sandy do? Limit the number of parts to get your vehicle under production.
Best part is no part.
Yeah, the best part is no part.
It seems Aptera can't exist without CPC, since all body parts can only be made by them. How is a partnership with CPC structured?
CPC is an amazing strategic partner for us. They've been there, done that. They are the automotive guys, and they do it at a level that, very few in the world, have accomplished some of these things. The most beautiful supercars in the world have come out of that shop, and the most beautiful carbon fiber parts in the world have come out of that shop. So.
And some higher volume stuff that's confidential that they can't discuss. We can't discuss.
Yeah, some very large manufacturers buy carbon fiber parts to reinforce their body structures, and a lot of pretty parts from them too.
I think how it affects our relationship is, well, it affects the product. I think it reduces one of the biggest launch risks of the company, that is the assembly of the vehicle. So we're focusing on what we're really good at here, and they're going to build the vehicle initially there, and they know how to do this. So they're not learning on the job. It's not their first time building a vehicle and putting all these panels together and making everything align. So it really de-risks, I think, the whole endeavor by getting a safe, reliable, quality vehicle out there without us having to learn everything from scratch here.
It alludes to the previous question too, the part count. When we receive this body structure and closures and seals and hinges and glass from CPC, that will be complete. There'll be one part for us. In our inventory management, we're managing this whole body structure and possibly all the metal work too from CPC, basically a rolling chassis. And that's one part number. Then we just have to add our battery pack, our solar, electronics, interior stuff, and we're done.
I can speak to this next one, and then you can add in if I miss something. When will the validation be completed? Crash testing, EPA, MPGE range, and all of the automotive tests be completed? I'd say next year, 2024. Part of the PI builds is to do these tasks. In fact, I think there's 5 vehicles of the PI builds that are earmarked just for crash test. And that's actually for the airbag manufacturer themselves. So it's part of not only the calibration and setup of the controller, the pre-tensioning the seat belts and the airbag itself. They have to crash the vehicles and calibrate all of that together. So all of that is earmarked for next year. I can't give you a quarter or a month of when it's going to happen, but obviously it will happen before the vehicles are sold, but it should happen next
Yeah,
year.
a lot of the testing is contingent too, right? You know, the anti-lock brake system can't be calibrated until the suspension team is done with the dampening. So you got vehicles that kind of have to wait and go through one process before they can make it to the next process.
Okay, in the past, the initial production rate was 40 vehicles a day. And what's your goal and expectation now, considering supply lines, wondering when the 400th Aptera might be released once production has commenced?
We can't wait to build that 400th Aptera for you. But we have planned and are capitalizing to build 40 vehicles per shift per day here at Aptera. We're not ramping up slowly and building 2 vehicles a day and then 5 and then 8 and then 10 and then 20. We are capitalizing with what would Sandy do's mentality of facilitize to build 40 vehicles per shift, hire the people and train the people to build 40 vehicles per shift, and then build 40 vehicles per shift. So we're not trying to start with some sort of low volume plan. We're just trying to execute on this 40 vehicles per shift per day. And you know, in that case, it may take 6 months to prove out the line and really get that to 40 vehicles a day. But once we're there, you know, it's 10 days until we build that 400th Aptera.
Very good. That advice from him was pretty absolute and unambiguous too.
Yeah, Sandy speaks the truth. He doesn't give you much wiggle room.
Would it be possible to get the launch edition with the Comma AI unit already installed? I'd say unknown at this point.
Yeah, we, you know, it could be that we make it through validation and we start to test these vehicles and the Comma system is very easy to integrate and hey, you know, some of the first launch edition vehicles, we can offer that with it, but you know, it's low priority for us. We want to get the vehicle stable, we want to, you know, prove out the mechanical and, you know, all the systems and electrical and firmware, and, you know, way down that list is adding the Comma AI system. So.
I'd say you might even say that is a little bit of a supply issue in that we want to get the right column that can control the electric EPS. And so being able to buy that at our volumes is, you know, that's going to be the challenge. Let's see. Do you have an agreement in place to use Tesla's charging network? Will all superchargers be open for Aptera since Aptera adopted the NACS right from the start, or are only certain ones available? So we don't have an agreement yet with Tesla about.
Yeah, we don't have the next phase for us is getting them to authenticate us on their network, right?
And that, when our last conversation with them was, hey, you guys show us your DC fast charging, and then do all these other little tests, and then come back to us, and then, you know, we'll give you the stamp of approval. So you may recall we paused DC fast charging, saying that we weren't going to include that with launch, and then we were skewered by the customers, and we said we're going to re-include that, and so that is part. DC fast charging is part of the new development right now, and that's part of why we enhance the cooling system and everything else. So that is underway. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, when we have the first validation vehicles, you know, it's basically, you know, testing out that system. The validation part of the system, you know, is relatively easy. So, but we appreciate Tesla and Elon opening up that standard to us. We fought hard for it. 42,000 people signed that petition, and we were the first to adopt the next standard. We feel it's just superior technology and works better for all. So,
this is an interesting one, a challenging one, but for you nonetheless. Can you clarify what's keeping potential investors away? I'm guessing they mean institutional, other than inherent risk and untried nature of a vehicle such as Aptera?
You know, I don't think we've had anybody that's done, you know, kind of a serious dive into Aptera not tell us that we're going to change the world. I think they leave with a very positive, you know, feeling about the product, about the team, about how we're executing on this plan. But overwhelmingly, you know, the first 20 conversations we had, they just weren't deploying capital. So, you know, if they're not deploying capital, it doesn't matter how brilliant they think your idea is. They go back to their investment committee and they say, no, we're not deploying capital. So I think that's been our biggest hurdle previously. Now I think, we're starting to see some green shoots in New York. The ARM IPO went well. They've had a couple other IPOs that have gone well. So I think, we're starting to see some movement there that we hadn't seen previously. But, we're first movers in this industry. We're creating a whole new market segment. The classification of solar mobility doesn't exist in the transportation landscape right now. And a lot of investors, they want dividends, they want low risk, they want things that are proven, they want post revenue, and we're just not that. So you got to find investors that are in our category of risk tolerance pre-revenue companies, that are in our category of extreme technology, and are willing to ride that train. And we found that the public understands and supports our ideas infinitely. That's how we've been able to raise $110 million from them. But institutional investors, when you take it to a committee, it's a much different conversation on assessing risk.
One more last question. When can investors who live in other areas of the U.S. come to your facility for a tour and a test drive of a pre-production model, or at the very least sit in one?
Well, you have reservations now. Eventually we will have production slots available, and then we will start to issue those production slots to people. Obviously we want you to be able to ride and experience the Aptera before you obviously have to pay for an Aptera. So if we're starting production next year we'll start to open up the facility and do test drives and all that stuff to prepare for our first
I
deliveries.
like how they do it at the Ferrari restaurant. They have a little garage right by the table, and when you take delivery of your Ferrari, you get to sit and have a meal, and see them pull it in and look at it while you're eating. So
I know you want to open a coffee shop that Aptera.
Pizzeria.
Pizzeria coffee shop. Okay. Well, we can have Modena pizza. We can have your type of coffee. What's your
it's
favorite
going to be
coffee?
called Pizza Bros.
Pizza Bros. All right.
And I'm a
It's coming.
pour-over guy.
A pour over guy.
Yeah.
The last question. Do we want to take too many more? You want
I think that's probably about as much as we have time for. It's 11 on the dot.
The last question was, what would you hope to see happening in 5 years at Aptera?
Ooh, 5 years Aptera. I want to see these vehicles on the road everywhere I go. I want everybody to know about it. I want kids to want it. I want kids to be drawing it, in their notebooks at school, thinking about the next version of Aptera that we're designing and what they're gonna drive. And I think I want it to be seen as not just the future, but like as the normal, and everything else is ancient.
Yeah, I think Tesla's been amazing in that it kind of snuck up on the world. And I think if you'd have asked any New York analyst 3 years ago what's going to be the #1 selling vehicle in the world, no one would have told you the Tesla Model Y. But it is. And I think the world has embraced change to electric vehicles, like no one really expected. And I hope that in the next 5 years that happens for solar mobility. That the world really embraces this idea of transportation can be more efficient. You don't have to, waste time, filling your vehicle up with gasoline or waiting at a charging station. Your vehicle can just charge itself. It can save you money. It can make the world a cleaner place. It's just smart engineering that we should all, embrace and love. And if we do that, we should be producing 5 years, 100,000 vehicles a year, and we'll have several factories open, and we'll be, have a worldwide footprint, and we'll get to travel all around and tell people about solar mobility and see the kids light up when they see it like they do when you go to the coffee shop, and really make an impact to make the world a better place. And it's with your guys' help that we've gotten this far, and it's with your guys' help that we'll continue to grow. So I encourage you, if you haven't got an accelerator spot, please think about it. If you haven't invested $2,000 to get that $1,000 coupon on your Aptera purchase, please think about it. And we are just humbled by your support thus far. It's been amazing to receive your positive love and feedback. Our communication team is always telling us about amazing notes that we get. So we greatly appreciate it. And we appreciate your time here today to learn more about our story and continue to spread the Aptera love to anybody you come in contact with, because it's really, as Steve said, we're an unknown quantity. We drive around San Diego. This is our home in Southern California. You think everybody would know about this cool stuff, but it's 2 out of 100 here.
So
And
much
it's-
untapped potential.
It's certainly less, across the rest of the country. So if you have a friend that's interested in advanced tech or doing better for the planet or saving money on transportation, tell them about Aptera. And hopefully they'll find our website, and hopefully they'll put a reservation down, and maybe they'll invest, and then we'll make all of this happen over the next 5 years and bring all those things we talked about to fruition.
You're on the edge of something really big with us, so thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody.